Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
We are not making as much money as we once did. This is not the golden era of television, although some of us would argue the shows are great. What do you say to them?
David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, which is, the parent company of the network I'm talking to you on right now, was paid $250 million last year, $250 million. That's about the same level as what 10,000 writers are asking him to pay all of us collectively, all right?
Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav was in for quite the rude awakening while delivering his commencement speech at Boston University. The CEO was met with boos and angry chants from students as he took the stage over the weekend in Boston to accept his honorary degree. This comes amid backlash he's faced following Warner Brothers Discovery's wave of cost-cutting and content-related tax write-offs last year, as well as the ongoing WGA strike, which started on May 2nd after negotiations between the Writers Guild and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers stalled.
David Zaslav was booed and interrupted yesterday with chants of "pay your writers."
When the writers who are making their shows, some of them are not able to pay their rent or their mortgages. I literally know writers who have had to go on assistance because they have not been able to make their year.
Also, I believe near term to how they turn that around. Their tougher path is it looks like they're about to lose the NBA on the Turner channels. That's kind of the linchpin of their cable deals. It's the backbone of TNT. And if they do, in fact, lose that, it's going to be very hard for them to regain ground with cable operators as they renegotiate their cable deals off the backs of alternative.
On April 8th, 2022, Warner Media and its various subsidiaries were acquired by Discovery Communications from AT&T for $43 billion. This was done after the previous merger with Warner and AT&T fell through and put them severely in debt. So this new merger seemed like a good advice in order to help the company get out of their debt and paint a brighter future for the company. Unfortunately for Warner, this would be the start of the company's downfall, as little did anyone know that they merged with a company that hosted one of the most incompetent executives in recent memory, David Zaslav, the president of Discovery Communications. He had a very unconventional way to help the company, and within just one night, the entire company seemed to collapse, much to the dismay of everyone at Hollywood. To make a very long story short, Zaslav made a name for himself in recent years, and not in a good way. This was due to various poor decisions he made during the start of his run as president of the company, with him making decisions you would have never expected, as he removed, canceled, and flat out deleted various projects from Warner Brothers, a decision that nobody, not even the executives who worked with David, agreed with. Yes, literally hundreds of projects put into jeopardy or flat out deleted without warning. This was just the first of many decisions that led to a long line of greedy, selfish actions on his part that screwed over just about everybody at the company and put all of Hollywood in a state of turmoil, unlike anything they've seen in decades. Now, there's already tons of videos, articles, and other pieces that have discussed the many actions of David Zaslav over the last few years and his repercussions on entertainment as a whole. There's plenty of ground we could cover here in terms of the projects that were affected by this botched merger. But for this video, we're going to be talking about the biggest projects that got the axe. That being the various million-dollar movies that Warner was forced to scrap because it supposedly would have been a better bet than to release these films that already cost them millions to make. These are the movies that will likely never leave the Warner vault. With Discovery and Warner Bros. Ending their partnership very soon, consider this our one-finger salute to this beloved exec. These are 6 canceled HBO Max movies.
Scoob Holiday Haunt. In 2020, an adaptation of the Scooby-Doo franchise was set to be released in theaters. Scoob was meant to be the starting point for the proposed Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. The movie was not only a Scooby-Doo movie, but also featured characters from other Hanna-Barbera properties, such as the Blue Falcon, Captain Caveman, and Wacky Races. It was meant to set up other potential Hanna-Barbera films using their most popular IP as a starting point for the universe. However, things didn't go exactly as planned. Of course, the film wouldn't receive a theatrical release considering the fact that it was released in 2020. With COVID shutting everything down, the movie was one of the many films released on streaming that year. Fortunately for Warner Brothers, their streaming service HBO Max had launched around the time that the film was planned to be released and was put on there for everyone to see. Unfortunately, this would have some heavy ramifications on the film's box office, since it didn't make back nearly as much money as it would have in theaters, with the metrics for measuring a film's profit being different on streaming compared to releasing in theaters. This also affected the potential for the cinematic universe of Hanna-Barbera, marking a bad start for the franchise. Despite this, Warner Brothers still saw Scoob as a big enough success to warrant a sequel, a fresh start to potentially revitalize the series. The sequel, entitled Holiday Haunt, would serve as both a prequel to the first movie as well as a holiday movie. The plot would have revolved around the Mystery Inc. gang as kids, celebrating Scooby's first Christmas by going to a theme park owned by Fred's uncle Ned. However, trouble would arise after the gang hears reports of a ghost haunting the fairgrounds, so now it's up to the gang to solve the mystery. The film also featured voice work from stars like Mark Hamill, J.B. Smoove, and Patrick Warburton. The movie had started production sometime around 2021 and was set to be released in the winter of 2022. However, that was the same year that David Zaslav took control of Warner Brothers and canceled various projects, Scoob being one of the largest ones they scrapped. According to the film's producer, Tony Cervone, the movie was allegedly near completion before it was pulled from the company's release schedule. Like with all the canceled or removed projects from Warner around this time, the movie was cut by Zaslav in an attempt to help Warner Brothers escape from their financial troubles, a mentality that didn't seem to work out for the company in the long run. With the cancellation of this prequel to Scoob, as well as the first film's mixed reception, the future of this proposed Hanna-Barbera universe remains up in the air.
The Wonder Twins. The Wonder Twins are a fairly known duo in the DC universe. Unlike most DC characters, their first appearance wasn't in a comic book, but rather a cartoon, specifically the 1970s animated show, The All-New Super Friends Hour. Siblings Zan and Jaina were a pair of twins who both wore rings that possessed their powers, which they could access when touching the rings together. Zan had the power to turn into different matter, such as gas, liquids, and solids, while Jaina could turn into animals, similar to Beast Boy from Teen Titans.
That tiger is awesome!
Form of water!
That tiger is awesome!
I also transform into ice and gas.
While the pair definitely have their fans and a lot of important history to the DC universe, they aren't super well known when compared to their contemporaries. Around the start of 2021, Warner Bros. Wanted to try and take a chance on the Wonder Twins by making a film adaptation focusing solely on them, in an attempt to tie them into the DC cinematic canon, while also making them well known to the public zeitgeist, as done with other characters like Peacemaker. Casting for the film began fairly quickly. KJ Apa was casted as Zan, and Isabel May was casted as Jaina. The film also would have had a budget of over $75 million. Not much went forward with the production at the time, and like many other projects greenlit when a company is restructuring, it just came out at the wrong place at the wrong time. With such a high budget and no guarantee that this film would succeed, Warner Bros. Felt it was best to not go forward with this project. The best thing we could say about this decision is that at least it made more sense to cancel an expensive film that hadn't yet started production, as opposed to an already finished movie. Suppose that's how the industry works, but considering Zaslav did both, and it backfired spectacularly, it just goes to show that sometimes the people in charge can only blame themselves and not the fault of an IP's popularity. So who knows if a Wonder Twins movie would have actually done well, but it seems that we won't know anytime soon, unless Warner is willing to take another chance on it.
Batgirl. And now we have the second big project that was scrapped by Zaslav in 2022. Out of the many projects affected by the merger with Discovery, the two largest projects to be scrapped were Scoob Holiday Haunt and Batgirl. The cancellation of Batgirl angered many fans of the DC universe who were looking forward to this project. The Batgirl movie began production all the way back in 2017. It cost over $90 million to make. The movie was also heavily promoted by Warner Brothers as their biggest film of the year, featuring big stars in the cast. Leslie Grace would have played the titular Batgirl, and other stars like J.K. Simmons and Brendan Fraser also being attached to the cast. Most notably, the film would have had Michael Keaton reprise his role as Batman over 20 years after Tim Burton's Batman film from 1989. The hype surrounding the film was massive, to the point where you wouldn't have expected it to be shelved, but that's what happens when you hire a CEO who primarily works in reality TV, further proving David's lack of insight on how the film industry worked. He felt that the cancellation of Batgirl and Scoob 2 would have helped the company out, but instead, this unsurprisingly put the company in even larger debt and worried everyone in Hollywood about the project's cancellation, with many citing the controversy surrounding this merger as one of the starting points behind Hollywood's troubles in the next year in 2023.
Take a listen. The honor to present David Zaslav for Boston University's honorary degree.
Some cheers, some boos. The CEO was met with from hundreds of students in support of the Hollywood writers' strike. In a statement after the ceremony, Zaslav thanked Boston University for the honor and said he has, quote, immense support for writers.
Combine that with the other DC films that bombed that year, such as The Flash and Blue Beetle, the former of which has a problematic actor as the main role. It's safe to say that this gambit didn't pan out so well, and further showed just how badly this merger has backfired. The film's future doesn't seem to be bright, but it has been stated that Batgirl will still appear in the DC film canon at some point down the line, but this film's release won't be the start of her inclusion. It doesn't take a major in business to know that shelving a near-complete film that cost millions wasn't the best decision. Although with Discovery and Warner Brothers demerging soon, and the potential of Zaslav facing legal repercussions with lawmakers citing his shadier business practices, the chance of this film releasing soon may be possible, but for now, we'll just have to wait and see.
Bye Bye Bunny, a Looney Tunes musical. This next project was one of two TV movies that was going to air on Cartoon Network and stream on HBO Max. Bye Bye Bunny was announced shortly after the release of the hit Space Jam 2, a movie that marked the Looney Tunes' return to the big screen. This film was notable for having themes of the Looney Tunes being irrelevant in the current age and wanting to make a big comeback, mirroring what Warner Bros. Wanted to do with the IP after the launch of Max. This would lead into the new Looney Tunes musical, Bye Bye Bunny. As mentioned before, this was a TV movie made for Max and Cartoon Network. Much like Space Jam 2, the movie would mirror Looney Tunes becoming irrelevant, with it focusing on Bugs Bunny, giving up his life of stardom in order to become a normal rabbit. Meanwhile, Daffy Duck, who is starved for fame, variant character for him, tries to take Bugs' place. The story would feature the rest of the Looney Tunes cast trying to help Bugs remember his love as a performer and make his way back into the spotlight. There also would have been a subplot in which Daffy Duck was held captive by an obsessed fan. The film was announced to the public in June of 2022, much to the excitement of fans of the Looney Tunes. However, less than 2 months later, Discovery began its controversial restructuring of Warner Bros. The movie was cancelled almost as soon as the announcement was made, really showing off just how corrupt the practices of Zaslav truly were. In more recent memory, it seems that these practices have died down, and there's a chance that these cancelled projects could see the light of day now, as many of the higher-ups at Warner Bros. Didn't approve of Zaslav's hasty decision-making or cancellation of these projects. It's sad to know that this film was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and had Warner not greenlit so many of these projects around the time of the merger, they could have seen the light of day.
Coyote vs. Acme. And now a twist for this list, as we cover a film that will be releasing next year. But much like the other movies we covered so far, the possibility of this complete movie being shelved was very close to being a reality. Coyote vs. Acme was a comedy film based on the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner segments from Looney Tunes, directed by Chris McKay, who also directed the Lego Batman movie for Warner Brothers. The film would be a live-action/animation hybrid film using cel-shaded animation for Wile E. and the Roadrunner. The plot would go for a more meta comedic approach, with Wile E. deciding to sue the Acme Corporation due to all the products he ordered from them being defective. He would be joined by an attorney named Kevin Avery, played by Will Forte, who would help Wile E. with his case while also having to deal with his own hardships as his former bosses representing Acme. The movie also featured talent from big stars such as John Cena, who played the film's antagonist, and Eric Bauza, who is the current voice of Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and pretty much most of the entire Looney Tunes cast. Coyote vs. Acme was yet another huge project that cost millions to make, a movie you wouldn't expect to be cancelled, yet much like Scoob and Batgirl, this multi-million-dollar film was very close to being on the chopping block. And despite many being against the idea, Zaslav was so worried that the film wouldn't do well that he thought the best course of action was to leave the film unreleased so that the company can file a tax write-off claim. Making this even worse is that the crew who worked hard on the film weren't even informed on the decision until after it was made. Investors and other higher-ups in Hollywood were enraged by Zaslav's actions and resulted in him receiving more backlash than ever before. And to further show off his incompetence, he publicly announced that he was gonna allow the movie to be workshopped to other distribution companies, which only further proved how bad of a decision this was on his part, since the bidding was more than successful. The competition for the rights of the film was fierce, with the price going higher and higher, but what people didn't know was that David only said he was gonna let the film be workshopped in an attempt to save face. No matter how high the price went up, he refused to budge so he can still make a claim for a tax write-off, as he felt it was a better bet. This would seem to have been the straw that broke the camel's back, and many have speculated that this is what ultimately led to the upcoming demerging between Discovery and Warner Brothers, the most controversial event in this whole 3-year ordeal, and one that blew up in Zaslav's face. The events behind the film convinced the public to fight for the movie's release and only brought it even more popularity, which could have helped the company with their financial troubles more so than any tax write-off could. In the end, the outcry for the movie's release made it impossible for the film to be shelved without serious repercussions.
It could have been wise, Daffy. We could be Wile E. Coyote right now. I hate to be political, but relief! Coyote versus Acme!
The movie was finally auctioned off to Ketchup Entertainment, who also distributed The Day the Earth Blew Up. The movie is set to be released sometime next year. This is the happy ending that we wish could have happened to the other canceled projects. It's undoubtedly a big win for the industry against this bigwig who made a fool of himself.
So I'd point out the fact that David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, which is, the parent company of the network I'm talking to you on right now, was paid $250 million last year, $250 million. That's about the same level as what 10,000 writers are asking him to pay all of us collectively, all right? So I would say if you're being paid $250 million, Ted Sarandos made about $50 million last year. These companies are making enormous amounts of money. Their profits are going up. It's ridiculous for them to plead poverty when the writers who are making their shows, some of them are not able to pay their rent or their mortgages. I literally know writers who have had to go on assistance because they have not been able to make their year. If you look at these companies, they're making more money than ever. It's the people who make the shows for them that are making less.
Adam Conover, thank you so much for coming on. Because you ruined everything, you may have just ruined my career, but I don't mind. Appreciate you coming on. And honestly,
we should definitely hold this event over Zaslav's head. The fact that this movie was 100% finished and was almost scrapped for a tax write-off, a decision that only one person was on board with, just shows how horrendous things have been for the company.
Driftwood. And lastly, we have what may just be the most tragic entry on this list. While it's unfortunate that all of these films got the axe, some facing a worse fate than others, I think Driftwood takes the cake of having the worst fate out of all of them. All the films on this list so far have been based on various properties from Warner Bros. While that's undoubtedly depressing in and of itself, especially for fans of these characters, what's even more tragic was a fully original movie being scrapped and never seeing the light of day, killed just months after it was greenlit. Driftwood was a proposed space opera film that would have been an original TV movie for Cartoon Network and would also concurrently release on HBO Max. The movie was to be directed by Victor Courtwright, who also created Thundercats Roar and the HBO Max miniseries Aquaman King of Atlantis. Unlike his other work, this film, rather than being a comedy, would have had a more dramatic and deep story running with the space opera theme. The plot would have been something like this. Quote, in a decaying forest civilization, dependent upon a toxic fuel source, and ruled by an evil organization, Clover, a tiny mouse-like creature, races across the stars to find Driftwood, society's last free city, which may hold the key to a safe and sustainable fuel source and future for the galaxy. The evil overlord Thorn will stop at nothing to eliminate Clover and destroy Driftwood in order to maintain their power. Clover and his new friends Marigold and Caspia must take a stand and stop them once and for all, and save their forests on the edge of infinity. The film was greenlit in May 2022, around the same time as the other CN-TV movie, Bye Bye Bunny. This announcement brought much excitement for fans of Cartoon Network, hopeful for this original property. Unfortunately for everyone, the movie was scrapped less than 4 months after it was announced. Yes, within the same year it was announced, this film was cancelled not even half a year later. This cancellation, along with all the others, infuriated people all over the world, alongside every other project at HBO Max, Cartoon Network, and all its other subsidiaries that were cancelled, removed, or both. For as bad as things got at the company, it seems that things have slowly gotten better, as the company has still had more unique and original projects released on the platform, even as Zaslav continued to sink the company further down the drainpipe. While there's a definite silver lining amidst all the chaos, it sucks to know that, hypothetically speaking, this movie could have been finished had it been greenlit at any other time, thanks to a clueless executive who bit off more than he could chew. In the end, his incompetence over the last 3 to 4 years will live on in infamy for fans of Warner's many properties, who had to endure all of his shit. A sad reality knowing that the richest people in the world truly are not the smartest.
Mr. President, I have the honor to present David Zaslav for Boston University's honorary degree.
You are a lawyer, executive, and media visionary. But above all, you are a storyteller. At your core, you know the best stories can inform, transport, connect, and change us.